All right, let's jump right in. Have you ever wondered if there's a totally different way to set up our societies? One that isn't based on, lines on a map, but on what people actually need? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today with a pretty radical socio-economic theory called PROUT. It proposes a complete rethink of our world, literally from the ground up.
The whole theory really kicks off with this beautiful metaphor from its founder, Sri Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. A society, like a flower garland, is only as strong and beautiful as its individual parts, right? If one flower starts to wither, the whole thing just doesn't look as good. This really sets the stage for a philosophy that's all about strengthening every single community one by one. So, here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with that social garland idea. Then we'll look at why current systems fail, according to the theory. After that, we'll explore the bottom-up solution, see how you might actually build it, and then check out its vision for the whole world.
All right, first up, the social garland. Before we even get to the solutions, the theory first lays out what it considers the absolute non-negotiables for any society to be healthy and functional.
According to the source, it all boils down to three main things. First, you've got discipline, not just for you as an individual, but for us as a collective. Second, there needs to be some kind of shared ideological inspiration, something that pushes society forward. And third, and this is the big one, economic stability. Without a solid economy, the whole thing is basically built on sand.
Okay, so that's the ideal. But now let's flip over to the problem. The theory has a really sharp critique of how most economies are run right now, and it takes direct aim at the whole idea of central planning. And here's the core argument, laid out side by side. On one side, you have the top-down approach, one single, rigid plan that gets forced on every single region no matter how different they are. The source actually calls this a utopian myth because it just ignores what's happening on the ground. The proposed solution? The complete opposite, bottom-up planning that starts with local needs and builds up from there.
And to really get why the theory is so critical of this, just think about it. Imagine two areas with the exact opposite problems. One has way too many workers, the other doesn't have enough. The source argues that giving them both the same economic plan isn't just a bad idea, it's, and I'm quoting here, nothing but foolishness. As a kind of historical case study, the source points to post-independence India. It labels that era as Vaishyan, which basically means dominated by capitalists, and argues that the top-down policies, which were friendly to those capitalists, totally failed to solve problems at the grassroots level, and just made exploitation worse.
So, if the top-down approach is broken, what's the fix? Well, this brings us right to the heart of PROUT's proposal, a total reorganization of society, starting from the smallest possible local level. The big idea here is something called the socio-economic unit. And what that really means is, forget the political borders you see on a map. Instead, let's group people together based on their shared reality, their common economic problems, their cultural ties, their geography. These units would become the new fundamental building blocks of society.
I mean, this really flips the whole model on its head. Instead of some central government deciding what a small town needs, the planning starts at the most basic, block-wise level. The goal is to make each one of these small units economically self-sufficient first, with the belief that if the foundation is solid, the entire structure will be too.
So, okay, that's the concept. But how do you actually build one of these units? How do you decide where one starts and another one ends? Let's get into the practical blueprint. The theory lays out 5 key ingredients that all have to be in the mix. It starts with the practical stuff, shared economic problems and shared economic potential. Then you layer on top of that the human elements, like ethnic similarities and a shared history, what the source calls a sentimental legacy. And finally, you've got similar geography that kind of ties it all together. Now, this next part is one of the most radical ideas in the whole theory. It's designed to stop what it calls the drainage of money. Each unit would demand that 100% of the revenue generated in its area gets spent on its development, at least until its local income catches up with the richest areas. The whole point is to stop wealthy centers from basically sucking all the resources out of poor regions. And it doesn't stop there. There's a whole suite of other pretty bold policies to support this. The theory suggests using a barter system between units to avoid unfair trade deals, getting rid of income tax completely, providing free education all the way to the highest level, and guaranteeing a job for every single young person. It's a really comprehensive vision.
I know this can all sound a little abstract, maybe a little out there, but the source material actually gets into some incredibly specific, real-world examples of how this decentralized approach could actually work.
Let's look at the jute industry. The problem? Middlemen are exploiting farmers. The solution? Simple. Let the farmers form their own cooperatives. Or how about tobacco? Instead of shipping it hundreds of miles away to be processed, you build the processing plants right there, locally. The goal is always to bring control and efficiency back to the local level.
And the level of detail here gets, wildly specific. For one particular region, Angadesh, the source lays out a farming plan right down to the exact variety of coconut they should plant, a special growing method using salt and sand, and even what crops like black pepper to grow alongside them. This is what that grassroots planning looks like in action.
The theory also folds in some, let's call them unconventional factors. For example, there's the east-wet theory. It suggests that climate actually affects people's energy levels, so people in wet eastern climates might be more lethargic, while folks in dry western climates are more active. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's part of the calculus in the theory's planning process.
So, we've built these small, self-sufficient units. They're strong, they're stable. But the vision doesn't just stop there. The final part of this whole idea is about how these little units eventually connect to form a truly global community.
The idea here is one of natural organic growth. As these local units get stronger and more prosperous, they'll naturally start to merge with their neighbors. Over time, you could see larger and larger entities emerge, not through war or conquest, but through mutual benefit, maybe even leading to continent-sized cooperation and beyond.
But, and this is important, this merger isn't a free-for-all. It's not forced. The theory says it can only happen when certain conditions are met. First, the economic gap between the units has to get smaller. Second, science and communication have to advance to connect people. Third, you need efficient administration. And finally, people from different units have to actually be mixing, socially and culturally.
And this really brings us full circle, right back to that core philosophy. The ultimate goal isn't nationalism, or what the source calls geopolitical patriotism. It's about humanistic patriotism, where your loyalty isn't to a piece of land, but to humanity itself. The final battle isn't between countries, but between all of us, together, against the forces of exploitation and division.
So we'll leave you with this to chew on. PROUT offers a detailed and, a radical blueprint. But if you put all the specifics aside for a second, the core question it asks is a powerful one. If we actually organized ourselves around solving the problems we all share, instead of just defending lines on a map, what kind of world could we build?